Welcome to historic Bethayres, a section of Huntingdon Valley, Pennsylvania, located in Lower Moreland Township in Montgomery County. Today, we're going to explore a few of the special historical areas around our town. Our journey starts on Mary Avenue, just off of Red Lion Road. As we walk down the sidewalk, you'll notice a big brick building with lots of classrooms and even a gymnasium. This is Mary Avenue School. In 1928, a two-story brick building schoolhouse was built on this site. This building served as Lower Moreland Junior-Senior High School and had students from 7th through 12th grade. In 1940, the large gymnasium was added at the north end of the building, and later an auditorium was added at the south end. Sadly, in October of 1967, a huge fire destroyed most of the building. Classes were relocated to churches and at the Red Lion School, which we'll see later in our trip. The building was redesigned to its current form that you see today and became our middle school. Next door to Mary Avenue, we have the newly renovated First Baptist Church of Huntingdon Valley. Located right at the bend in Mary Avenue, the church sits between the school's two driveways. The original church began construction in 1901, although members had first been meeting since 1897 in a home on Huntingdon Pike. They later met in Oddfellows Hall, which was located at the now Huntingdon Valley Bank. They even met at the Lady Washington Inn, which we'll see later in our trip. The original church was renovated again in 1926. You can see how they honored the original designs in many of the new renovations we see here today. As we round the corner on Mary Ave, take a look down Barrett Avenue. When you look down the road, the house that sits at the end marks where the original toll house from Huntingdon Pike and Welsh Road once sat. It is documented that when Huntingdon Pike stopped being a toll road in 1928, the toll house was loaded onto a sled on a snowy day and pulled up the fields onto this site by horse. A famous resident of this avenue was the town's Iceman. His name was Shepard Barrett, who was known as a musician, sign painter, entertainer, artist, and carver of peach stones. Take a look across Huntingdon Pike. The house at 2434 Huntingdon Pike is a fantastic representation of the way historic houses are built. Can you spot the slate roof with a special rosette design? And the stone walls on all four sides. Many of the houses on Huntingdon Pike and Mary Avenue have some very unique features. Keep an eye out for slate roofs, especially ones with designs, front porches, shutters near windows, third floors, gingerbread-style trim, and barns in the backyard. Let's take a journey up the pike and see if we can spot any of these features in the houses that we see. Here at 2464 Huntingdon Pike, take a look at the curving roofline and the walls with different style wood carving. This is a special type of roof called a bell cast hipped roof because it resembles the shape of a bell. Can you spot the circular window at the top of the house? Those are the windows to the third floor. The windows on the second floor also feature tiny panes of glass and a special arch design. Can you spot the different details in the siding of the house too? Some pieces of wood are straight and others look like the scales of a fish. Here at 2501 Huntingdon Pike, we see another fantastic and colorful example of how these historic homes have third floors. This house's third floor is highlighted in an orangey red color with yellow trim. Can you spot the details of the exposed rafter tails? This house honors the tradition of a slate roof with an updated shingle roof designed to look like the original heavy slate. It is also the first house on our tour that has an enclosed porch. This house has been home to many restaurants over the years and has always been a local favorite. 2511 Huntingdon Pike was home to Dr. James Crow, who was the town's local doctor. He made house calls on a horse and buggy. Imagine having your doctor today come to your house, let alone arriving by horse. Let's take a walk around back and see Dr. Crow's barn. As we arrive at the back of Dr. Crow's house, let's take a look at the first barn on our tour. Much of Huntingdon Valley was farmland, and many houses built in this area had a barn where they kept animals. This would be where Dr. Crow parked his horse and buggy. The barn has been restored now to be an artist's studio. Here at 2519 Huntingdon Pike, we have the home of famous athletics baseball player Jimmy Fox. Mr. Fox lived here and entertained many of his famous baseball-playing friends of the day, including Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig. Mr. Fox's house features a special three-tiered section in the front with a decorative octagon shape and a fancy finial on the top of the roof. What a home run of a house! 2525 Huntingdon Pike is a house that is over 200 years old. This is the first house that features a special gingerbread-style trim on the roof. Can you spot it in red? It also has functioning shutters on all of the windows, which would have been opened and closed in bad weather to protect the delicate glass. Did you notice the fancy woodwork on the porch? This is a classic example of the craftsmanship of our historic houses in Bethayres. Get your library card ready. 2531 was home to our first library. It had only 7 books on the shelf when it first opened. The library operated on the first floor, and over the years, through many donations and the work of the Women's Club of Huntingdon Valley, money was raised to expand the number of books. They even helped to move the growing library in 1967 to a vacant church on Red Lion Road, which we'll see later. The collection of books would eventually grow to over 24,000 volumes for members of the community to check out. 2534 Huntingdon Pike has been home to a number of businesses over the years. Many remember this location as a barber shop, where back in the day, a haircut only cost 25 cents. Take note of all the classic features of this historic home. Let's continue down the driveway and take a look at special buildings out back. This small blue building was a wash shed for the Markley family. They did not have washing machines to clean their clothes, just a good old-fashioned rub-a-dub-dub scrub in the old wash tub. Notice how this house has a beautiful cupola and a weather vane up top to show which way the wind was blowing. Many of the clothes that were washed here would have been hung on a line outside to dry. This is the home of the Lawrence Saint family. Here at 2537, Mr. Saint made famous stained glass windows. The barn behind the house is where he designed the windows, and the glass house is where the red-hot furnace produced the special glass. Mr. Saint used his neighbors as models for some of the windows, which most famously appear in Washington, D.C., in the Washington National Cathedral. Some of his work is also featured more locally just up the road in the Bernathen Cathedral. The famous Lady Washington Inn was named for George Washington's wife Martha, who once stayed here during the late 1770s. Built in 1761, which is a date engraved on the north side of the wall, the building was used as an inn until the late 1920s. It served as a congregating spot for many local groups throughout its life. Look carefully at the dormer on the 3rd floor to see the original stars. There's also a water pump out front that's been there for over 200 years. The Lady Washington is the only survivor of 3 inns that lined Huntingdon Pike from Bethayres train station all the way to Byberry Road. Fetters Mill Square was the home of the late Huntingdon Valley historians Sylvia and Norman Fessmeyer. Sylvia is the author of Window on the Past, a book on Huntingdon Valley history, and a book from which many of the illustrations and information in this tour comes from. The house features original windows that are hand-blown glass and even has a summer kitchen in the basement to help keep the house cool in hot weather. It was built in the middle of the 1700s, about the same time as the Lady Washington Inn that we just saw. We've now reached a major historical intersection in Huntingdon Valley, where Huntingdon Pike meets Red Lion Road. On the northeast corner where the bank is, stood a large dwelling that housed the Huntingdon Valley Post Office and a general store. There was also Doc Brown's drugstore, ice cream parlor, and home. He was famous for his double-decker ice cream cones. It later became a market with apartments, and in the 1970s, the market became Famous Bill's Market, where many Lower Moreland students feasted on Bill's meatball sandwiches. There was even a tiny shoemaker shop on the pike above the market, heated by a potbelly stove in the winter. Further up the pike was Oddfellows Hall, that was the center for many social gatherings. This building used to be Memorial Baptist Church, whose roots go back to 1872. In 1976, the building became the Huntingdon Valley Library until 1995, when it was relocated across the street, which we'll see in just a few stops. This white house across from the fire company was built in the 1870s and was the home of Franklin and Emmy Ely, who raised and sold pigs in a barn out back. The house originally had 6 rooms and was built by local mason Ephraim Slug. It was vacant for many years, and after being historically renovated in the early 2000s, it currently serves as an office building. Today, Huntingdon Valley has a fully equipped firehouse and a very loud siren that brings instant help. But there was a time when a fire company in Huntingdon Valley was non-existent. It was in 1911 when several community members met next to the Lady Washington Inn to decide that we need a fire company. They were able to raise money and purchase our first hand-drawn chemical hose cart. Then, in 1913, the local butcher donated land to build the first firehouse. In 1914, wheels were added to the original cart and it became a horse-drawn cart. In 1918, a motor-driven engine was added. Midvale Steel Company donated a locomotive tire for a fire alarm, which still hangs outside the firehouse today. In 1953, the fire company built the firehouse that we see today. In 1973, an addition was added to make room for bigger trucks and taller ladders that could reach newly built apartments in Huntingdon Valley. In the years to come, the fire company has seen many technological advances and improvements to their apparatus, emergency dispatch equipment, and personal protective equipment. The department, which started with 15 volunteer members, has grown to boast over 100 volunteer members, some with as many as 50 years of active service to the community. Look carefully up the hill at the Huntingdon Valley Library. Notice the middle part of the building that's constructed of stone? It was added as an addition to the original Red Lion School. Built in 1892 with 3 classrooms and a basement, the school was one of several in the Moreland area. The bell tower on the roof provided a welcoming ring for morning arrivals. Students walking to school could pet the cows from Schmidt's Dairy Farm next to the school property. Eventually, the school was used for kindergarten through 6th grade. When it closed in 1980, it serviced grades 3 and 4 and was the oldest continually operating school in Montgomery County. Where cows once grazed, Lower Moreland High School now stands. Formerly Schmidt's Dairy Farm, the building opened in 1967, occupying over 57 acres. Growth throughout the township necessitated an addition in 1971 to allow the school to hold over 1,000 students. A new high school is currently being built on the hill on the southeast corner of the property to accommodate even more growth that Huntingdon Valley has seen in the current years. The small church-like building on the corner of Mary Avenue and Red Lion Road is currently a medical building. In 1892, the site was donated by George Merry to begin building Huntingdon Valley's Methodist Church. In 1958, the church moved to its present location at Huntingdon Pike and Byberry Road. As you walk down Mary Avenue again, notice many of the 1900s houses that you pass. When you arrive at 2581 Mary Avenue, though, you've arrived at one of our first police stations, held in a regular old house. Chief Russell Pletcher's house served as a police station and even had a jail in the basement. We've now come to the end of our tour. We've arrived back at Mary Avenue School, making one big loop around the block. We hope you've enjoyed traveling through our town and looking into the windows of the past to learn about how our little town of Huntingdon Valley came to be. The next time you're driving or even walking through this section of our town, take a moment to slow down, observe, and appreciate the rich history of where you live. Happy exploring!